Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome. Shh, shh, shh. Is it on? All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Su-Ling Ching, and it is my honor to be the President and CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade. On behalf of Mayor Mark Sutcliffe, the Ottawa Board of Trade, and the Ottawa Business Journal, welcome to the Mayor's Breakfast. I'm joined this morning by my co-presenter, Michael Curran, the President and Publisher of the Ottawa Business Journal and our lead premier business media outlet. We are thrilled to be gathered here together at our City Hall in beautiful downtown Ottawa. Ottawa is built on unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. The peoples of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. We honor the peoples and land of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We honor all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. As we kick off this morning's breakfast, let's recognize the great businesses and organizations that support this speaker series. Our lead sponsor, Hydro Ottawa, our presenting sponsor, Commissionaires, RBC, Algonquin College, the Westin Ottawa, Edelman's, Enbridge, Ottawa Senators Hockey Club, our global partners, Oakwood and the Casino Lac Limi, our AV partner, Ottawa Print Services, our speaker gift sponsor, Eamon Hardin, our coffee sponsor, Capital Office Interiors, and our breakfast sponsors, La Cité. Could I have a big round of applause to say thank you? I think you may know that we're going to change up our agenda a little bit this morning, so it is now my pleasure to welcome to the podium His Worship Mayor Mark Sutcliffe to invite our special guest minister, Bethlenfalvy.
Thank you, Su-Ling. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est vraiment un plaisir de vous voir ce matin. And, you know, this is our last Mayor's Breakfast of 2024, of course. And it gives me the opportunity to look around the room and see all the great leaders in our community that we are so grateful for. I'm seeing, you know, great business leaders and great community leaders, the executive directors of not-for-profit organizations, and so many people who have been instrumental in driving our community forward in the last year. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of you for your leadership, for your contributions to our city. I think we have a lot to be proud of in Ottawa, and many things are going in the right direction. We still face lots of challenges as a community, but we're making progress, and it's thanks to people like you that that's happening. So thank you all for what you're doing for our city, and here's to a great 2025. Merci beaucoup. And I want to thank Su-Ling and the team at the Ottawa Board of Trade for everything they're doing as well. We're looking forward to continuing to collaborate with Su-Ling and her team and the members of the Board of Directors as we work hard to revitalize downtown Ottawa and the Byward Market and rebuild our economy and continue to see economic progress in our city. I know Michael Crockett's here from Ottawa Tourism as well. They're doing a great job bringing events like the World Junior Hockey Championships to our city, partnering with the Ottawa Senators who are here today as well. And you know, I used to say that any morning that I woke up and the Senators had won and the Maple Leafs had lost, that was a good morning in Ottawa. So the Senators didn't play last night, but the Ottawa Charge, our PWHL team, played last night, and they beat Toronto. It was a great game. They beat Toronto, so now I can say any day I wake up and the Ottawa Charge beat Toronto, that's a good morning as well in our city. So we do have a lot to be proud of as a community. As you know, we're reestablishing our air links to international destinations like Paris and London, and the Ottawa Airport is getting busier and busier, and Porter Airlines is doing lots of great things. We have the World Juniors coming. The Ironman Canada event is coming next summer, which is going to be very exciting for our city. We're making progress on downtown and the Byward Market, and we have a lot to be excited about in the future as well. And we're grateful for our relationship with the provincial government. One of the first things that I set out to do when I became mayor was to build a strong relationship with our partners at Queen's Park. And the Premier and I had a phone conversation the day after the municipal election 2 years ago, and we pledged to work together. And our guest today, Peter Bethlenfalvy, the finance minister, was in Ottawa shortly after I became mayor, and we had a meeting and started a great working relationship right from the start. And that has led to many beneficial things for the city of Ottawa, including the deal that we announced in March when the Premier was here of more than $540 million in investment in our city. And because of that investment and the other moves that we've taken as a city council, my colleagues from Ottawa City Council who are here today, I'll just point them out: Kathy Curry, Catherine Kitts, Marty Carr, Glenn Gower, Ralston King, Laura Dudas. I think David Hill is here as well. There he is. Is that everybody? Great to see so many representatives of council here today. Merci à mes collègues pour tous ces efforts. Marty Carr and Kathy Curry and I are part of a group that is focused on finding savings and efficiencies at City Hall. And because of the help of the provincial government and the work that we've done together with city staff and our colleagues on City Council, we've found more than $207 million in savings and efficiencies in just 2 years. That translates to a 10.5% tax increase that we are not imposing on our residents and on businesses. So we're able to reinvest that in the areas that matter most, in the areas that residents care about most: basic services like roads and infrastructure, public transit, emergency services, hiring more police officers, paramedics, and firefighters. So we're investing in the areas that matter most, and we're doing it without adding to the inflationary burden that residents and businesses are facing. We continue to have some of the lowest tax increases in all of Canada, and it's because of the hard work of my colleagues on council and the support of the provincial government that we're able to do that. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening with the provincial government, about the economic landscape right now with someone who knows it very well. And we even have a little bit of news to share this morning. So without further ado, please welcome Ontario's Finance Minister. Please give him a warm Ottawa welcome, Peter Bethlenfalvy. Good morning, Peter.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Hi.
Great to have you here. And as I mentioned, you know, we met very early on after I became mayor, and I was very grateful for the opportunity to, you know, I think I was in the early days of being mayor. It was a new job. And ever since then, you've been very available and accessible and ready to work together on the challenges we're facing. And so I'm very grateful for that. And before we get into the normal stuff that we would be talking about, I wanted to highlight the fact that we have some news to share this morning about some funding that is going to help downtown Ottawa and the Byward Market.
Yeah, thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? Yep. Oh, yep. Great. Well, it's great to be here in Ottawa again. Mayor, thank you for being such a gracious host. Council members, the Board of Trade, thank you. Great champions here for building the economy here in Ottawa. The Business Journal. Thank you to all of you for being here this morning. Merci beaucoup. C'est un plaisir d'être parmi vous ce matin. I look forward to getting to some of the questions. The announcement. And I feel really, really good about this. You know, as part of our deal with Ottawa, a very unique city in in not just Ontario and Canada. You're the nation's capital. You've got over 1 million people, and of course, a number of the asylum seekers who we welcome to this country and several times end up here. So we have unique challenges here in Ottawa, and we're very supportive of helping you. We do a lot more when we work together. So what we're doing today and announcing is we're putting in an additional $20 million, $1.5 million into Invest Ottawa on the balance to the City of Ottawa to help with economic revitalization so we can have more people working, that we can support small businesses, support businesses in the community, and really grow the economy, because when the economy grows, we all win.
That's great news. Thank you, Minister. And that will be focused on the downtown core and the Byward Market and supporting economic growth in those areas, supporting small businesses in those areas. So that news, that will come out in a news release today. So thank you again for all the support. And as I said, your support and your government's support has been instrumental in helping Ottawa tackle the challenges that we've faced as a city and tackle some of the budget pressures that we've been facing. So as we prepare to vote on our budget next week, I want to thank you again for the huge investment that the province made earlier this year, and we're continuing to implement. Because, what sometimes people don't understand is, the announcement gets made, but then the hard work happens after that at the bureaucratic level with our team at the city and with your team in the finance department and with other departments of the provincial government to actually implement the funding and implement the changes that result from that funding.
Yeah, people often ask me, are you going to have an election? What's your view on that? I say, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. What you do is you execute against your plan every single day. And you have to be transparent about that plan. We ran in 2022 on my budget. The people gave us a vote of confidence and a mandate to keep going. And keeping going means to rebuild that economy, to continue to build the critical infrastructure for our growing communities, to continue to strengthen our health care. And, in the challenging times economically, too, with higher interest rates and inflation that we've just experienced, help people who are struggling, keeping costs down, putting money in their pockets. And so I just look at it, Mark, that we just have to keep doing what we said we would do, and whatever happens, happens. And that's why this announcement is so critical, because it's another piece. We negotiated that deal. Here we are executing against that deal, providing more support for police and for mobile crisis units, supporting more help for homelessness and shelters, helping more in terms of economic vitalization, including the Byward Market, where that tourism heart of Ottawa that is so important to presenting opportunities for people, tourists and others. It's a continuum: transit, housing. We've had announcements with you on housing, and so the key is put out that plan. Update the people. I go out every 90 days, by the way, and the media, sometimes they're not saying, Bethlenfalvy, you're doing such a great job, we have no questions. It's usually the other way around. So, but that's good. That's good for democracy. That's good for transparency, and we'll continue to do that.
So let's talk about transit just for a second, because you and I have spoken about it a few times. You're aware of the campaign that I launched calling for fairness for Ottawa. And we spoke as recently as a couple of days ago, and I think your government, the Premier, and you have both been clear about the fact that you're ready to support Ottawa if the federal government supports Ottawa. So I just wanted, we don't have anything to announce today, but I just wanted for our guests today to reaffirm that we are continuing to talk about that and work on that together, and we're ready for the federal government to join us in that conversation.
Let's do a poll. Who thinks he's a pretty effective mayor? Yeah, no, there you go. Look, one thing I learned in COVID we might talk about is when you work together, you go a lot further together. You can get more done. And, transit is Ottawa's challenge, for sure. But we have made that commitment in that time of challenge. We provided a lot of infrastructure support, and I mentioned other type of support on a range of things through the Ottawa deal. But we've made that commitment. The Premier's made that commitment. I'm making that commitment. Devil's in the details. But in principle, we're supportive of helping out Ottawa to help on the transit side when you need some help.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That's good news. So I wanted to get into your background a little bit because your parents' story is a compelling story, and it's also a big reason why you decided to serve in public office. So can you tell us a little bit about your parents and your background?
Oh boy, how much time do we have? Look, not unlike many people in this room, other than Indigenous, everyone came from somewhere else. And, I think, a pretty typical story where my parents came from, because of they're Hungarians from World War II, fled to the West looking for a better life. And they found it in Canada. Canada accepted them. I was in Halifax recently and went to the museum there, and anyone who's got any roots that people came over, go there. That museum is phenomenal. You've got researchers there, and I found my dad, who landed in May of 1951, the boat he landed on, when he landed, where he came from, how he even spelt his first name with a K instead of Nicholas without a C. And I found my grandparents who came through Ellis Island and then up to Canada through that. And they came to this country with nothing but the shirt on their backs. And what they were really looking for was an opportunity to raise a family, an opportunity to feel safe, an opportunity to get an education and to get a good job. And so that's kind of motivated me through my life, because I grew up hearing the stories. 3 great-grandparents came over. Imagine that. They're probably in their 70s when they fled. And they come to this country and have to start all over again with nothing. My great-grandmother in Toronto on Tranby Avenue worked as a cleaning lady. She should be in retirement. But this country gave her the opportunity. I grew up with that influence around me, and I thought, what a great country. And so to give, that's one of the things that motivates me to kind of, it sounds a bit trite to say give back, but I remember Prime Minister John Turner said, democracy doesn't happen by accident. It requires hard work. It requires diligence. And when you look around the world and you see what's happening in democracies, we know we have to continue to commit to doing everything we can so that we can pass on to the next generation the country and the province in as good a place or even a better place than we found it.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really important message, and obviously I can relate to it as the son of immigrants myself, and that's been a big driving force in my life and the community work that I've done, and the reason I love this city so much is because Ottawa was very welcoming to my parents when they came here separately as immigrants. But it's a vitally important message, I think, to reinforce at this time when we are seeing the issue of immigration and new arrivals and people seeking asylum has become a more polarizing issue globally, and there's a risk of that happening in Canada.
Well, at the risk of being impolitic, I think the federal government has really mismanaged the immigration file. We've had a consensus in this country that immigration is good. People around the world want to come to Canada for all the reasons that I just said. My parents, Canada, they came to Canada with nothing, and Canada gave them everything. And so we are that country in the world. But we can't let everybody in. We have to manage that. And what I mean by that is we got to make sure that we have, when they get here, the infrastructure, the housing, the schooling, the hospitals, the supports. We'd welcome as many as we can, but we have to be measured about how we do that. And I'm going to continue to work 24/7 to make sure that we continue to have that immigration consensus in Canada. But it has to be done in a way that that works for the country, for everybody. And we've kind of grew too fast, and now we're with a sledgehammer putting a hammer down. I was talking to the fellow from Algonquin College. Where are you? Right there staring at me. The college is, the international cap students, big ramp up and now a big ramp down. That's, you have to have a plan and we have a lot more to do. We're expanding, our energy footprint on all levels, which will require skilled trades like engineers that we haven't seen in a long time. We've got to make sure we've got the skills in this province as well. And immigration plays a real key role. So we'll continue to work with the federal government, any federal government, to make sure we get the immigration file right.
Let's pick up your story again, because you grew up in Montreal, which is why you're okay with me making jokes about the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, because you're a Habs fan, right? And
You know I'm an MPP from Toronto, right?
none of your constituents are here. It's fine. So you grew up a Habs fan, like I did, because there were no Ottawa Senators when I was a kid. And by the way, there's a standing invitation for you to come to a Montreal Canadiens versus Ottawa Senators game here in Ottawa in the future. Tell me about your life growing up in Montreal, and then you started a career in finance, and what drew you to that, and tell us about some of the roles you had.
Look, I missed the scores from the weekend. How did Ottawa do against Montreal in the Women's League? Anyone?
It was a
I know, cheap
shootout.
shot. Cheap
It was a
shot, I heard
shootout.
someone say. Look, it's great fun to have that. No, I was born with a pair of skates, as you are in Quebec, and two toughest jobs in Quebec is to be the general manager of the Habs or the head of the Caisse de Dépôt, and I grew up in that culture, and so and what a great place to grow up in Quebec. My parents actually met in Toronto, but my dad got a job with Alcan, so moved to Montreal, and I still, at my heart, I love Quebec. I love this country. I've been to every single part of this country. I learned early on that I was good at math, really good at math. So, finance requires you to be good at math. So I was good at flashcards, like in grade 1, grade 2, for the vintage that can remember those things. And of course, I love people. And, mixing, in finance, you don't make anything. You're dealing with numbers, you're dealing with people and collaboration and problem solving. So I got the bug very early at the stock market. Making money was kind of part of it too. Having fun with markets. I grew up in the capital markets, working in financial institutions. I'm looking at Sean Webster, who's our man on the ground here in Ottawa for our government. We met in the 80s working on the Michael Wilson campaign. He was, just because my parents moved to Etobicoke, and so I went up to the MP. Michael Wilson said, "You need a volunteer," and he was finance minister. So there's a continuum of things that's propelled me to sitting here talking to you as the Minister of Finance.
Yeah, and tell me more about, obviously Michael Wilson was a role model and a mentor for you, and highly respected finance minister. I would say very similar approach to the approach you take, very balanced approach to things. So maybe tell us a little bit more about that.
Oh, he was a giant. He was a giant, and he was a role model. And one thing about people who volunteer for you, as I've learned now that I'm the candidate and the minister, you never forget them. You never forget people who knocked on doors with you. And he never forgot me. I mean, every time I reached out to him, he picked up my phone call. We had lunch. We played golf together. Here's a guy who's Minister of Finance of Canada, and Sean, you'd vouch for that as well. But he was a great man in terms of public service and a role model. And you wouldn't find a man with greater integrity than Michael Wilson. What better role model? The pressure's on us politicians, as you know. We got interests all the time. You got to have that, people lobbying you, and you got to have that North Star, that compass, do the right thing. And he taught me a lot about how he handled those challenges and his work ethic. Oh my God, the work ethic of the man. And that's what we sign up for in public service. We can't complain about 24/7 because this is the job that we signed up for, folks. I'd have to pick him up at, like God knows, back then at 7 a.m., to go knocking on doors or hand out flyers at the subway, and I barely got up before 9 a.m. back then. And so this guy and we would work all day long, the work ethic, and then when he got out of politics, continuing to do that public service, whether it was through CAMH. May know the sad story that his son died by suicide in 1995 at a time when people really didn't talk about that. Everything was very hush hush, and so he got involved with mental health and addiction. And I was there for the unveiling of his bust at CAMH. Sadly, he passed away. I would go to him and say, who do you talk to when you're Minister of Finance? So, because I'm conservative, I would think Jim Flaherty and Michael Wilson. Well, we lost Jim too early, and I only had Michael as finance minister. In fact, he wasn't finance. He was passed when I became finance minister. I got to say, this country has a great tradition. I was on the plane last night. Jean Chrétien was there. I've reached out to Paul Martin, people from all sides, Stephen Harper, Brian Mulroney. They all gave me time to kind of, provide advice. And that's another thing that I really love about this country, that we You know, when the big things are at stake, we rally together, we put partisanship aside, and we work together in the best interests of all of our constituents.
That's great. So what's your North Star? What are the values you try to bring to the job, and what's the bottom line for you as you're making decisions as finance minister?
There's a couple things. You know, we're given a privilege to be in this office. I think it was, who was it that said you can do, when seeking advice whether they should run and get in the cabinet. Jane Philpott was making this point. I think it might have been Paul Martin again who said, you know, you can sometimes make decisions and do things in 10 minutes that might take you 10 years of advocacy to do on the outside. So that's an immense responsibility on our part. So use it wisely in the short period of time that you have. And I think of it in two ways. There are some big things you got to get right. The big things, you know, building the infrastructure, rebuilding the economy, fixing the fiscal challenges in our balance sheet, you know, getting modernizing alcohol. You know, we've done that. You know, 100-year structure of not being able to get a beer in a corner store. So focus on the big things, not too many, have a few of them, but you can also do some things that may not be big things to all people, but they really matter to some people. And let me give you some examples. In the fall economic statement, I announced that we are providing increased funding for fertility programs. They're very expensive for those trying to have a family. That maybe doesn't affect anyone in this room, but to the people that it does, it's massively impactful. And in addition, announced a fertility tax credit. Last year in the fall economic statement, I was able to announce that we expanded breast cancer screening for ages 40 to 49. And again, that's a broader sector, but you get to do some things that in every budget and every fall economic statement. Victim services, I was talking, what's the name, Harmony?
Harmony House, yeah.
Harmony House. You know, folks, the work that they do, remarkable, you know, for some of our most vulnerable citizens. So leaning into supporting supportive housing, you know, supports for people who are in a very vulnerable position. You get to do things like complex needs for youth. I launched a pilot program with the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, Holland, Bloorview, and McMaster to do a kind of multi-ministry program to help kids with complex special needs, because I also believe getting in there early, intervention earlier, helps so much down the road. And so leaning into that. So are we perfect? No, we're far from perfect. But if you can keep moving certain files forward and focus on a few things that may help a lot of people or may help some people, that's my North Star.
That's great. But you have to do that, obviously, while maintaining a solid fiscal foundation. And I know you just learned some good news last night about our credit rating. Did you want to share that now?
Well, yeah. You know, one of the fallacies is you have to. It's either or, and it's an and. You can do these things, like I just mentioned, for women, for youth with complex needs. You know, you pick many of these things. Healthcare. You can do these things and be fiscally responsible and help people out when they need help. Now, before I give the news, I'll just mention on the $200 taxpayer rebate checks. Now, why did we do that? Well, first of all, our tax revenues are way up. And why are our tax revenues way up? Because our economy is growing much faster than anyone thought. We've created almost 200,000 new jobs just this year in an environment where interest rates were high, you know. So we're growing the economic pie, which gives you more opportunity to invest in healthcare, invest in social programs, to invest in infrastructure, rebuild the economy, help Ottawa out. But people are struggling. You can see polls from Angus Reid to Ipsos that people are really, and you know it, you know people that are struggling, the price of groceries, the cost of housing, the cost of gas. So that $200 check that we're giving everybody, 15 million people in Ontario, is because we're coming from a position of financial strength. That will help a family of 5. That's $1,000 that will come in the new year at a time when they really need that type of help. We're able to do it from a position of financial strength. And you don't have to just take it from me that our fiscal situation is better. Our debt to GDP for the wonks here is going down. Our interest expense to revenue, for those who are here in the 90s, to remember when interest expense was like 33 cents on the dollar. Ours is 5.5 cents, the lowest since the 1980s. We're coming at it from, thank you. But don't just take it from a politician. Standard & Poor's yesterday upgraded the credit rating of Ontario to AA low. So that's the first upgrade in almost 20 years.
Congratulations.
And why? Let me just finish. Why is that? Our borrowing costs are now the lowest. We are able to borrow money at the cheapest rate of any province for the first time in a decade. We've really turned that fiscal ship around. In our public accounts, we showed that we saved $1 billion in interest expense year over year. Think about that. That's $1 billion that I can use to maybe pay down some debt, invest in healthcare, give a little bit to Ottawa, help some of our programs, rather than give it to a bondholder. And what we're borrowing, which is basically we're borrowing now, because we're virtually balanced, we're borrowing to build infrastructure, and we're doing catch-up. If you don't build subways, if you don't maintain highways, if you don't build new highways when you got 1 million net population growth in the last 2 years, subways, hospitals, long-term care, homes, we've got to keep building. So that's where our debt's going to. And of course, when you're paying less for interest, you're better off.
What's your sense of where the economy is going? As you mentioned, a lot of people are feeling pressure. There's an affordability crisis for a lot of families. I think for 2 or 3 years, people have been talking about there being economic hardship just around the corner, and yet so far we've managed to avoid it. So what's your sense of where the economy is going in Ontario and in Canada, especially given some of the new factors that might impact Canada, like tariffs from the United States?
How are you sleeping, Mark? I can tell you I'm sleeping like a baby these days. I wake up every 2 hours and I cry. But I'm doing that so you can sleep better at night. We didn't know. You never know what's around the corner. I've been in the markets now, working for like over 30 years. There's things that hit us. I remember, obviously in the financial crisis, no one saw that coming or the extent of it. We had COVID. There's always something around the corner, and that's why it's important to have, fiscal strength. Fiscal strength is so critical. And so with regard to the economy, I think the lower interest rates are helping. Our forecasts for economic growth, private sector forecasts, are much stronger than we had even anticipated in our budget back in March, and even in our fall economic statement, we continue to see some growth. That said, 2 big headwinds. One is, I would say 3, but 2 imminent, and the third more longer term. The immigration caps are having an impact, on our, and so the economic forecasts are coming down a tick because of that. The tariffs, I would say, it's unpredictable for sure, but what I would say is that we've got a great story, and we're telling that story. If you think about Ontario, $500 billion of two-way trade, 27 states that we're the number 1 or 2 trading partner, 9 million people who wake up every day with a job to export things into Ontario. And let me tell you, we're making sure and have for years and years that every governor, state legislature, people there in the House and Senate and presidential administration know our story. But folks, many of you are in business here. You got to tell your story. We're not an island here. We got to continue to communicate that story. That's why 2 days ago we launched a massive ad campaign hitting Fox News, hitting Washington, D.C. We're going to be in the Super Bowl. 30 states we're going to be in. And you've got to see these ads. If this doesn't, make you proud to be a Canadian when you see these ads, we've got a great story to tell. We're great friends and allies. They've got no better friend. And of course, tariffs don't help anybody. They hurt both sides of the border. So I think we're going to do everything we can in partnership with Ottawa. In partnership, the Premier has the Council of the Federation pen, so he's leading the charge with all the premiers. And we are working overtime to try to make sure that we minimize any impact, and where we get to is an absolute economic win-win. And I think that everyone in this room wants us to work 24/7 to get the best possible outcome for everybody in Canada.
I know you have a you have a plane to catch very soon, so we're gonna wrap up quickly. But just a couple more questions. One, how would you navigate the Canada-U.S. relationship from this point? What would your approach be? And you'll be part of it, obviously, as along with the federal finance minister and other finance ministers.
Yeah, look, we have to communicate. We have to be on the same page. We have to, like I said, we didn't come up with these ads yesterday. We've been working on these for half a year, having that game plan. So that game plan is being executed. It wouldn't have been easier. It might have been easier, who knows, but with Kamala Harris, who voted against the Kuzma deal, who, if she'd won the blue wall, those 3 states are pretty trade protectionist. Biden administration is pretty trade protectionist. But I don't think we're the friend, we're the ally. It's important to remember that we compete fairly, labor and environmentally, et cetera. And when goods come in from China, et cetera, it's not a level playing field. So I think we're going to continue to reinforce that the United States of America has no greater ally and friend and common interests than Canada. So I think that's our number one approach. As I said, but you got to tell the story, because senators, they've told me this. We love you. You're great friends, but sometimes we forget about you because we're dealing with a lot of complexity around the world. So we just have to, all of us have to continue, businesses have to continue to support us and to make sure we get the word out to your businesses cross-border, so they're talking to their representatives, and we're having those conversations across the board.
Last question. I know you have an image as a suit and tie guy. You're a finance guy. You're the finance minister of the largest province in the country. But you're also a rock and roll guy. You play the guitar, and you've had some great moments playing the guitar. Just tell us about your love of music and some of the fun times you've had with that.
Oh boy, here goes my reputation. I got to get reelected, eh? Yeah, if you've heard me sing and play, you'd wonder about how I get reelected every time. I love playing guitar. I have so much fun. I revert to just being a kid. I'll give you an example. A couple weeks ago, Pickering Mayor Kevin Ash, he has his mayor's gala, raised over $500,000 for charities, and there was a band there. And 2 hours before, they called me up and said, "How would you like to come on stage?" I said, "Well, I don't have my guitar. I haven't practiced. I haven't rehearsed." He said, "No problem. We have a guitar on stage. We have a pick on stage. Come on up." So I went up, and so no rehearsal. We played "Can't Get No Satisfaction." Pretty easy song, but "Can't Get No Satisfaction" from the Rolling Stones. And then my favorite one to sing and play, which is "Rockin' in the Free World," which I know really well, and I belt that one out, and I go crazy. So you do see another side of me. There is another side, folks.
That's great. Well, Peter, thank you again for joining us today, and thank you for the continued working relationship and collaboration. I'm grateful for the fact that you're always just a phone call away if we need something, and looking forward to continuing to work together in the best interests of Ottawa and Ontario. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mark, for your hospitality here. You're terrific to work with, your council members. I've met many of them every time I come here. I know there's challenges. We have shared challenges. But Ottawa is so critically important to the economic success of Ontario and Canada. So we have to get it right. I just believe when you work together, you can do more together. And you've been a great partner, and we'll continue to be by your side as we, re-energize the economic vitality of this great city that has so many things to offer, tourists, local communities, and business. But let me leave you with one tip. Our key really, we really didn't talk about it. Try to get Taylor Swift here.
Can you help us with that?
I might shake it off, and I know, bad dad joke, but you've got the prospects for Ottawa are so bright, and you've got a friend and ally in Queen's Park.
Peter
Thank you very
Bethlenfalvy.
much.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Minister. Just on behalf of all of us, I just wanted to say thank you for the news today of the investment in Ottawa. Thank you. We appreciate you and the Ontario government's commitment to collaboration, to economic growth, and to long-term prosperity. So thank you very much for being here in Ottawa. I just want to call quickly on Jacques Harnan from Eamon Harnan to present a small token of appreciation.
This is where you have to eat on the way back.
Thank you, everyone.
Is he speaking again? No? Okay. Jacques, sorry about that. I skipped your last name. Jacques Eamon from Eamon Harden. Thank you. Sorry. Are you speaking again, Mayor? No? Oh, okay. Hey? Do we have any questions for the Mayor? We had an extra 5 minutes, so do you have any questions for the Mayor?
So I just remembered that last year we had a guest for the mayor's breakfast, for the last mayor's breakfast of the year, and then he wasn't able to attend. And so at that time, because it was the last mayor's breakfast of the year and we didn't have a guest, I kind of opened it up to questions for people. So I'm happy to do that again today. If we have a few minutes before we wrap up this morning, because our guest had to leave to catch a flight. Jake? Ironman, yeah, this is really exciting. I mean, I won't be participating, but I don't. Are there any triathletes? Has anybody done a triathlon or an? I know Walter's done many. So this is an incredible event, and for people who participate in Ironmans around the world, they go. It's great from a tourism perspective because people go for multiple days. So they go visit the city in advance and they train there because they want to get to know the course. Then they show up a week before the event. So, Ottawa Race Weekend, for example, is a great event for our city, huge for tourism. The weekend is always, sold out from a hotel perspective. But when people are running a half marathon on a Sunday morning, maybe they travel to Ottawa on the Friday or the Saturday. They stay for 1 or 2 nights, and then they go home. For an Ironman, people typically arrive several days in advance, and it's a multi-day experience for them, and they bring family and people to cheer them on because they're doing this incredible event. Does everybody know what an Ironman is? You swim 3.8 kilometers. Then you cycle 180 kilometers, and then you run a marathon, 42.2 kilometers. So for some people, it's 16 hours of competing. For some people do it in 8.5, but for some people, for mortals, it's 16 hours of competing. So you want to have your family there waiting for you at the finish line. So you bring them. So hosting Ironman Canada, we're hosting it this year, and I think for several years to come. Is going to be huge for our city. It's a real economic opportunity, and it's going to be right downtown. The route is through downtown Ottawa, so people are going to get to see what an amazing city this is when they come and visit. Anyone else? Yes. Great question. Did everybody hear the question? So the question is about investing in social services and the future of that. And this is, a great opportunity, frankly, to highlight the great work that's being done in the community by so many wonderful organizations. We're so fortunate in Ottawa to have many, many great leaders in this space who are doing hard work every single day. I've been fortunate enough to serve as a volunteer on boards with different organizations in the city, but the real heroes are the people who go to work every day in those organizations and devote their full-time energy to supporting the most vulnerable and advancing social change. So we're grateful to those people, and we want to support them as much as we can. Our budget for 2025 is going to invest an additional $30 million to more than 100 different organizations in our city who support the most vulnerable, but not even that is enough. We need to continue to work with other levels of government at this really critical time to make sure that investments come from the levels of government that have the really big resources. And so we're continuing to advocate as a city. That's a subject that comes up often when we're talking to other levels of government, and organizations like the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities are doing advocacy on this as well, because there needs to be a new relationship between the different levels of government to address the fact that more than ever, the challenges that we face as a society are felt at the local level, at the municipal level, but the resources aren't there to address those challenges. So that's why we need to continue to advocate, and why we need a new deal with the provincial and federal governments to make sure that we have the resources we need and the community agencies have the resources they need to support the most vulnerable in our community. So thank you for bringing that up. Anyone else? Yep.
My question is, if you were to do a talk with high schoolers today, what would you be telling them about where the social in the world and your point of view?
Great question. So there are lots of things I would say. First of all, I have two teenagers at home, and I'm, there's a tendency in every generation, I think, for people who, my age, for parents to sort of despair about the future and kids today don't understand. That's not how I feel about the future at all. I'm really excited to see young people taking on leadership roles, and we have a great program with Youth Ottawa where we choose 2 high school students to be mayor for a day, and they come and join me for the day at City Hall, and we go around and do things together, and we're still in touch with some of those previous mayors of the day. So I'm really excited about the amazing young people we have in our community who are ready to take on leadership roles as they move through high school and university and step into the workforce. So I'm very excited about that. But to answer your question directly, my advice would be to get involved and to consider community service and even political office in their futures. I think, unfortunately, there are a lot of disincentives right now to serving in a leadership role in the community. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of pushback, there's a lot of hostility, there's a lot of toxicity, and I think that's discouraging a lot of people from working in politics or serving in politics, whether that's running for office yourself or serving behind the scenes. People don't want anything to do with that, and that's frankly tragic. We need great people to step into leadership roles in our community. We need more people to put their hands up. We need good people to do that. And so I would encourage people to get away from the toxicity of social media. I don't look at social media. There are people on my team who look after social media for me, so I don't have to look at it. But I ignore all of that, and I focus on getting out in the community and talking to real people and hearing what their concerns are, what they're facing in the community, what they would like to see us do. I go out to events, I go knock on doors, I get invited to a lot of things. I talk to real people instead of the people on social media. And I would encourage young people to do the same. Young people, including my kids, spend a lot of time on social media. It gives them a skewed perspective on what's going on in the world. Get out in the real world, meet people, see what the challenges and opportunities are, and get involved in politics and community service more broadly, because the only way it's going to change is if more good people, more productive people, more proactive people get involved. Otherwise, we're just ceding all of that territory to the trolls.
That's great. Thank you so much. What a wonderful thought to end on, the trolls. If you, since you're not checking your social media, I just want to mention that every morning when you write Good Morning Ottawa, I always love it. So, okay. I didn't know. I thought you might have known, but if you're not checking, I just want to say a few words to thank our board members who joined us this morning, Brendan McGinty, Rick Chase, and Julie Lupinacci. Thank you so much for your continued leadership. Also to welcome some key economic partners, including Sonia Shorey of Invest Ottawa and Michael Crockett from Ottawa Tourism. Thank you for being here and your ongoing partnership. Thank you to our OBOT ambassadors who joined us this morning, John Nelson and Walter Noble, for welcoming all the new OBOT members, and of course to all of our members, partners, and volunteers. Really thank you for your support in making sure that Ottawa has a strong voice of business. I want to say thank you to all the city councillors. I'm not going to name you since the mayor did, but I really appreciate you being here this morning and the leadership that you continue to demonstrate every day, and the collaboration that you have demonstrated as well throughout the year. I want to say thank you to Enbridge Gas, who's an OBOT pillar partner and who is one of the pillar partners that's responsible for making sure that we have the ability to do the advocacy and economic development work on behalf of the business community that we do. I think we can all be grateful for the news that we heard here this morning about the province's investment in our city core. We really feel as though it marks an important next step to kickstart, calibrate, and advance a lot of work that really is already being done in downtown Ottawa, especially as we look at the Downtown Ottawa Action Agenda that we launched earlier in the spring. Prioritizing safety and security, which we hear all the time, and what we know, and the Mayor, I appreciate your remarks, what we know is that safety, security, social justice is a big part of our ability to grow our economy as well. So we're all integrated, and that's one thing that we know for sure. Also the investments in infrastructure, and of course the opportunity, not just for the government, but also for all of us to share the Ottawa opportunity on a global platform. Downtown Ottawa is a key asset for our visitor economy, which last year brought in $2.6 billion in spending, and also offset our tax burden in Ottawa by $2,000 for every household. Tourism, excuse me, is the front door of every form of economic development. If we build a place where people want to visit, then we have built a place where people want to live. Then we have built a place where businesses and residents want to invest. So as the downtown goes, so goes the city. I want to say special thanks to our ongoing partnership with the city, Ottawa Tourism, Invest Ottawa, BOMA, and the NCC on the Downtown Initiative. As at the Board of Trade, we will push forward on the Downtown Champions Table and the Vibrancy Office. Thank you to all of our economic stakeholders, our elected officials, business and community leaders who are working together to build up Ottawa. We are also very optimistic for next year and the coming years. We believe that radical collaboration is our competitive edge in Ottawa, and I'd say today we're winning. So thank you to all of you.